catastrophic. So we are at a tipping point. I'm running for school committee, and I am buoyed by the people like the Green Team, the Sustainable Scholars, the initiatives you've all undertaken, starting with the plastic bag ban, for example. And my generation is going to learn from your generation, and it's very important to support your programs in the school system.
Hi, so that's a great question. The environment is definitely important to me and my family as well. We're relatively new to Ipswich. We moved last spring, and that was something actually that drew us to Ipswich, was we saw how environmentally conscious this town is. You've got town composting, which is not common, at least from where we were coming from in Virginia. We're big composters, we're big recyclers. I have a fourth grade who's on the Green Team at Winthrop. So I think it's great that you guys do so many environmentally sound things in the schools, and it's definitely something that I am interested in furthering and growing. So thank you.
To give my background, I've worked on environmental protection for more than 3 decades, so before you were born. I currently teach environmental policy and protecting water resources at North Shore Community College. And prior to that, I was executive director of the Ipswich River Watershed Association for almost 20 years. And prior to that, the conservation agent for the town of Topsfield. So I have a long history of working on environmental issues. It's not the only thing I've worked on, but I think I have a pretty strong track record to be able to say with confidence that environmental protection is very high on my list of priorities.
Hello, I'm so glad you're here. I can answer that question in a lot of different ways, I realize, as I sit and listen. I have a background in art. My art, when I got my footing, began to be about my interest and curiosity about human beings' relationship to the environment. And I began to get uncomfortable with being an artist a little bit, or focusing on being simply or purely an artist, because I felt that the urgency was so great that I needed to do something more, which is why I wound up going to Tufts University to get a master's in urban environmental policy and planning. I took a circuitous direction to get there, which took me to studying things such as ecology at Harvard University and chemistry and biology at UMass Boston, and then I wound up working in environmental writing, which I've been doing a lot of. So one thing I do want to say is that I would like to make the point that concern with the environment, I don't like to isolate environmental concerns from everything else. I think it's directly linked to other things. It's linked to our mental health, it's linked to our future, it's linked to our economy. There's a lot of discussion, debate, there's been debate for years, decades, about whether it's human activity is the cause of climate change. And I think the time is, we can move away from the question, is it fossil fuels that are causing it or not? We have renewables, and renewables, the whole renewable energy sector actually represents incredible opportunity for job growth and innovation. So I think focusing on in the environment actually is a great help to many other concerns.
The more I think about it, the more I've been working on this campaign, I realize that the environmental concerns and climate change need to actually be at the top. Because every decision that the select board is going to have to make for the next 20 years, and as we look ahead for the next 20 years, is going to have to look at it through the lens of climate change and what's going to happen to Ipswich and what's going to happen to Massachusetts, and then beyond that, the world. So whether it's a discussion about whether we need to fix the roads, or what is the next project on the library, everything we need to do is in terms of figuring out what's going to be most energy efficient, and also we don't want to waste money. It would be silly to pave a road when we know that the oceans are rising and we're going to have to build a bridge. So I think all the decisions that the select board is going to make for the next 3 years, 10 years, and 20 years have to be made thinking of the impact of environmental change and climate change, because otherwise we'll be foolish. So I think that it's actually at the top of the list, and everything spirals down from there.
First of all, congratulations on your achievement, and thank you for the work that you do. It's very important. But I would like to say that in my opinion, the environment is the top of the list for me. And to reiterate a little bit of what the other candidates have said, the reason why I personally think it's the top of the list, and I can confidently say that, is because when we have all of these projects that we're facing in town, when it comes to our utilities, our infrastructure, whatever, the environment is intertangled in all of those. So, for example, whenever we talk about a project, we have to be considering the environment when we're executing that project. If we're reinforcing our utilities towards climate resiliency, when we're building new buildings, like a new school or a new facility, how can we be environmentally friendly and reduce our carbon footprint? So no matter what we do in town, the environment always has to be considered, because we have to do our best to stop the damage that we have been creating, and how do we address the damage that's already been created. And by innovative ways of being environmentally friendly and using resources that we have to, naturally deter the climate change, that's what we have to do to the best of our ability. So the environment always has to be taken into consideration when we do these things, and that's why I consider it a top priority, because it's always going to be discussed, no matter what project we're doing.
Thank you. Would it be unfair to ask which one of...
Oh, Charlie. Yay. He's a politician through and through. Thank you.
Take one lady.
Charlie Pierce, candidate for Select Board. I'm from Linden Street, also a member of Ascension Church here, and really excited to talk about the environment and what it's going to mean for little guys like Teddy. I apologize for being late, but my wife had a work trip called in and the babysitter couldn't make it, so it's the life of a new parent. So.
Okay, our next question.
Hello, my name is Natalie Whitten. I'm in 7th grade, and the question I have for you is, do you have a specific plan to combat climate change control in our community and promote sustainability?
So I would say that, when it comes to any decision making in town, it's a group effort, because none of us up here have a master plan on exactly which move to make and the best way to do it. And that's why we have subcommittees that help us make decisions. We have people that go out there charged with a certain mission. And I would say that if I was elected as a select board member, when charging a subcommittee with a mission, I would make sure that the environment is being considered when doing the research, because that's what needs to happen. Those are the discussions that we need to have. So, like I said, in conclusion to the last question, is basically whenever a project is being taken in Ipswich, the environment has to be considered. And I think if we use that strategy moving forward, you'll see a real reduction, at least from the municipal end, because obviously it's also a self-effort too. But on the municipal end, you'll see a reduction in our carbon footprint and the environment at our hearts.
So I just want to make sure I hope I answer your question when I go. If I don't, raise your hand and tell me to get back on track. As I pointed out the last question, I think all the questions are going to start to echo each other, but they're all important. One of the initiatives that the town has just done is voting to become part of the green communities. And projects like that are essential and important. And it's not only just to vote to become it and to take our first $145,000 grant, but to actively look at each year at the possible grants that we can get. Being part of the green community will give us up to $250,000 of grants a year. And so that if we can continually be active in terms of saying, okay, what is the next project and what do we need to do? Because every project that we undertake, which will be energy savings, will also prevent us from energy waste or help us not to waste energy. But also I think it's important in sort of, I think, your question is specific to Ipswich, but also it's important that we, as part of this community, realize that we're only a small part of the world. And so any time that we can join others, whether it's in a plastic bag ban, styrofoam ban, and actually, rather than joining, I think green community environmental scholars have been leading our community in terms of how to promote environmental sustainability. But we're part of the green communities. By being a part of a larger movement, we have more ability to make a difference in the world, and that's important. So I think continuing to look for projects that we can be part of the larger movement is important, and also to be actively seeking out how we can make our own community better, project by project.
I'm so excited that you're standing there. So I actually have a vision for Ipswich, which is a town that actually leads by doing. One of the reasons I'm running is because I'm frustrated having to admit to meetings, which I've actually seen some of you guys out a lot too, which is a certain skepticism and a reluctance to act. I've said this before, I'm a bit frustrated seeing that Ipswich tends to be more reactionary than proactive. I'd like to see it become more proactive, especially concerning environmental concerns and climate. I think there's great opportunity for Ipswich to identify itself as for what it is, which is a fantastic coastal town with a lot of open space, natural landscapes, and actually build an economy, a town economy around that. So that it isn't that each project that we encounter, whether it's a development on 133 or development on Linebrook Road, et cetera, that we have a more holistic vision that is built around the Ipswich environment.
I want to thank the Green Team first for your participation in the meeting, the select board meeting the other night when the vote was taken about the green communities. I think your voicing your support for that was important, and so I give you credit for having done that. I also want to mention I've taken part in 2 workshops this year at Town Hall, and some of you were at some of those workshops as well. They were called Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Workshops, and they were specifically to identify the key areas of town that are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So I think that's very important for us to come to a consensus about what we have to deal with. So, that's basically in terms, sorry, can you all hear me? So that basically will help us to identify what the key priorities are in terms of, the actions we have to take. And then the other thing is we need to take actions both individually in our own everyday lives and as a community to reduce emissions and to promote local agriculture and specifically organic agriculture and things like that that can be beneficial in helping to sequester carbon and reduce emissions. Those are very, very important. I think we also have to recognize that coastal wetlands are extremely important carbon sinks, and our coastal wetlands are in serious jeopardy right now due to sea level rise and other factors. So we have a big task ahead of us in terms of making our community more resilient in terms of the impacts of climate change.
So in terms of plan for climate change, I kind of break it down into 2 parts. And one is what can we do?
Bring the mic up to your mouth.
Sure. What we can do from a personal and town level, and what we can do to do our part in terms of reducing our carbon footprint. But then also what we can do in terms of resiliency in the town to make sure that when sea levels rise, which they're expected to do, that we're prepared as a coastal community to deal with that. From a personal level, there's all the things, composting. I'm a big fan of community rainbow programs, which Hamilton and Newburyport have gone into. I'm eating local this year at Appleton Farms, and they have not just the meat share and vegetable and fruit, but those are pretty expensive. It's not something that every single person can do. So there's also those things that can reduce our carbon footprint that are free for the citizens of Ipswich. I don't know, as a show of hands, how many people have done the Mass Save program or know what it is here? Great. So this is a town that's really thinking about this. They come. It's a state-run program. It doesn't cost Ipswich a dime. They replace all your light bulbs, and we need to get, as the town needs to really take a lead effort in making sure that we get as many people involved in that as possible. It reduces our water capacity needs from the town, and it saves people money. The second piece, and it's kind of the planning issues, is resiliency. We know that we're going to be affected by climate change, and there are some studies on the roads down at Cranes Beach, as well as the Great Salt Marsh, which is, especially if there's going to be more hurricanes, these sort of coastal barriers are going to become even more important. So we need to put together a good plan around all of that. I know the community development plan, we talked a bit about this a few nights ago. I hope to see it in that, but I'd really love to see it, as a kind of a holistic area to say, all right, in 10, 20 years, what do we expect from climate change, and how can we build resiliency now in Ipswich to prepare for that?
Thank you. So climate change is definitely daunting.